Hi, my name's Christopher and I'm a research software engineer with Research Software Workshops, and it's a very warm welcome to Introducing Version Control with Git Part 2. So the link to the material is here at the bottom, and if you go to the Installing Git page, you should find something that looks something like this. Now on this page we're going to learn how to install Git onto your computer. As I've said before, Git is an open source, completely free program that is available for easy installation on a range of operating systems, including Windows, macOS and Linux. Now to run through this workshop, all you will need to have installed is the command line version control Git. We will not be using Git graphical interfaces in this workshop, although we will talk about them at the end. We do this because once you understand how to use the command line tool, you'll actually then totally understand how the GUIs work as well. And indeed, as we said in the first part, there are only 10 Git commands that we need, and you'll find it's actually quite easy and quite quick to work with the command line tool. Now the instructions below that we have here will show you how to install them on each of the different platforms, and indeed what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically show you some quick videos which will show you how to install it. So if we start with Windows first, so here we have Windows, so you've booted into Windows, and what you'll need to do is basically if you go to the material, so open up a web browser, so here I am starting Microsoft Edge, and then go to the installation page on the workshop. So once your web browser is started, this one's taking a little bit of time to start. There we are, go to chriswoods.com/introducing-git. So introducing Git, yeah, that's right. I can never spell introducing. And then go to the installation page. Now there's a link on this page to download the installer, and this is actually installed from the official Git website. So if you click on that link, it will take you to gitscm.com, and this is the download page for Windows. Now pretty much all Windows now is 64-bit Windows, and so you'll be using the 64-bit Git for Windows setup, which should have been the one that will have been automatically selected. So you see there above the click here to download manually. When you click download, Git for Windows will then download. It's not a big download, just 46.6 megabytes, so it shouldn't take too long. Once it has downloaded, you'll then click on it to start the installation process. And indeed, once it starts installing, you can close your web browser. Installation will take a little bit of time. You may need to have super user rights if you don't have them already. If you don't have super user rights, you may be able to install Git for Windows from, say, a software catalog that's available if you, say, have a university computer or a software center. But if you do have super user rights, you should be able to install here. And so basically the key thing in the installation is make sure that Git bash is highlighted. So as long as you've clicked Git bash will be installed, that's fine. And indeed when we go through, you can also choose your editor. Make sure you choose Nano. So Nano should be listed on here. It's actually hidden at the top. So if we scroll up, you've then got use the Nano editor by default. Choose this. It's the easiest thing for beginners and I highly recommend it. Now Git originally called things master. It's best to actually override the default name. So if you change the default name and just enable it to be called main, that's a much better name to be using for these things. Otherwise, we want to use Git from Git bash only. Make sure that top option is selected. And then for the rest of the options, they are going to be defaults. So yeah, we've got a few options. They're all the defaults from these parts onwards. And then once we've been through all of them, it will then install. Now the install process on this machine takes a while, so I'm just going to zoom through this video so you don't have to watch all of it. As you can see, it was quite a while to install. Where we go? That's it. You don't need to view the release notes, and when you click finish it will be installed. To start Git, what you need to do is go into the Windows menu and then go down to Git and then start Git bash. You want to start Git bash because this will provide you with a command line window which will pop up here where we'll be typing all of the commands in during this workshop. So like make it bigger, give yourself some more space, and then once it's been created you can check Git has been installed by typing git --version. When you hit return, what you find is you'll have a little printout here which will show that Git has been installed and it's all working. Now if you're working on Linux, Linux is much easier to work with, so this is a Linux desktop. All you need to do is basically start a terminal. So this is Ubuntu, so we start a terminal just by clicking at the bottom and then typing in terminal. And then once your terminal window is open, just type git. Now in many cases git is already installed on your computer, but if it's not, you'll get a little helpful error message saying no, it's not installed, and indeed here on Ubuntu it tells you how to install it, which is sudo apt install git. On different Linux distributions there'll be different commands you'll need to use, maybe yum install git, apt get git, there are a variety, and we do provide a link which will basically in the main notes which shows you how to do it. Once you've installed git, again you'll get the command line back again once it's finished. It takes a little bit of time, as you can see. Here we go. You can then check it has installed by typing git ---- version. When you do that, you should see the version number of git printed out, as we have here. Now, as I said, in the notes under Linux, there is a little link which we have here where you can basically follow those instructions for other Linux distributions, but it generally is just using your installer, doing apt get install git, yum install git, dnf install git, etc. If you would like to build and install from source, we do have tarballs available on kernel.org. Now I'm running on a Mac, that's the machine that I tend to use, and on Macs you have several choices for how you install Git. Now the easiest way, although it takes the longest to install, is to use Git that is installed as part of Xcode, which is Apple's free development environment that is supplied as a separate download. I'm going to show you how to do this in a second. If you don't want to go down this route, then you can install it by basically going to the official Git website and choosing macOS, and they basically have instructions on that page for installing via Homebrew. So if you've got Homebrew installed, it's literally just brew install git, or there is links to a binary installer. Now, as I said, Xcode is the easiest way to do it, although it takes a lot of time. And what you have to do is first install Xcode if you haven't already. If you haven't installed Xcode, the way you do it is you go to the Apple App Store. So let's go to the App Store here. And then if you search for Xcode, and when you search for Xcode, you should see it pop up. As you see, I've already installed it. But essentially on Xcode you'll have a little install here. Xcode is completely free. Click install and Xcode will then install itself. Once you've installed Xcode, and it will take a while, it's about 12 gigabytes, start a terminal, and this will start a new terminal session. You're going to be typing commands into this session, and I'm going to full screen this to make it easier. Let's make this a bit bigger so we can read everything. There we are. And then to check that Git is installed, type git ---- version. It's the same as we were doing on Windows and on Linux. If Git is installed, when you hit return, you'll see the version number come out. It may be that when you type git ---- version, the command line tools with Xcode have not been installed, and in that case you'll get a little thing saying the command line tools have not been installed, in which case it will give the instructions of how to do that. And again, that's within Xcode, you do the install command line tools. Okay. So now that you have installed Git, and hopefully it's now all working for you, you can type git ---- version. This is the way we check that Git is working. And as I said, if Git is installed, it will print something out to the screen that will look something like this. And indeed, when we looked, I did git ---- version, we have that exactly printed to the screen. If you see something like command not found Git, that implies that Git has not been installed on your computer, in which case have another go through these instructions, and if you're really stuck then please do get in contact with our group and we might be able to provide some help, or Google for the solution. Git is relatively easy to install, but there are always things that can go wrong. Now we're going to be using Git from the command line, so we'll be typing commands into this command shell. Now I know that command lines are not you may have never used one before, and don't worry, we're not actually going to use that many commands within this workshop. As I said earlier, we're going to be using the command line because once you know how to type Git commands out the command line, you will then understand exactly how Git works, and you'll see exactly what the GUIs are doing, what the graphical interfaces are doing. So once you understand, in this case there'll be 10 commands, that's all we need to learn for Git. That will give you a deep knowledge of Git, which will make things much easier. Now, as well as having the 10 Git commands, there are also going to be 3 general commands that we're going to be typing in. The first command is mkdir, and mkdir means make a directory, and that's how on the next page we will create a new directory. cd is the command which means change directory, and that's how we're going to be changing into the new directory that we've created. And ls is the command that means list, will list the contents of a directory. It's how we'll check that there are files within the directories we create. And again, these are the only 3 commands we're going to use. And as I said, there'll be 10 Git commands of a Git command cheat sheet that we will build up through this workshop. Now there's one final thing that we need to be able to run this workshop, and that is a text editor. Now a text editor is a program that's, shock horror, it enables us to edit text. Now basic text is not a Word document, which has formatting and lots of extra things and pictures and tables. Basic text is just basic text, and we need special programs that can actually just create basic text. Now there are many different free text editors available, and you can choose the one you like the best. Commonly used ones include Nano. Remember, for Windows installs I recommended that you installed and used Nano, and this is really a good text editor for beginners. It's my personal favourite and also my personal choice. It should be installed by default on Linux and macOS, and indeed when we did the Git Bash installation for Windows, you should have installed Nano then. If Nano for some reason is not available, then you can follow this link to see how you can install Nano on your computer. Now on Linux, it may be that Nano is not installed, but if Nano isn't, you could maybe yum install Nano, or there is a similar program which is called Pico, and Pico and Nano are very similar in how they work. An alternative to Nano is Vim or VI. This is the standard text editor which is available everywhere. It's definitely available on all platforms, and as I said, if Vim isn't available, then VI, which is an alternative, is also available. This is a much more complex text editor to use than Nano, and I would not recommend it if you're a beginner. But if you know VI or you know Vim, then please do use that. And indeed, if you know Emacs, which is a competitor to Vim, please use Emacs. I'm not going to force you to choose one editor or the other. Now, if you like graphical editors, so Vim and Nano are text editors which work within the command line. Notepad++ is a graphical text editor which will open up a graphical window and is available on Windows. This is very easy for beginners to use, but it's not available for macOS or Linux. If you follow the link, you can install Notepad++ on your computer. And as I said, we're using a text editor to create text, which will be used partly within Git, but also to create some files which we can then version control. While we're only using text files and only version controlling text files within this workshop, I do want to remind you and do want to say that Git can be used to version control any kind of file produced using any kind of program. For example, Git could version control Word documents produced by Word, or PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, photos, anything you want. Git can version control any kind of file produced by any kind of program. Okay, so hopefully Git is now installed, Git ---- version works, and you've chosen a text editor that you're comfortable with, which you'll be able to use to work and run through the workshop. What I will do now is show you how to use Nano, if this is like you've never used a text editor before. And indeed, I think I'll do that on the next page, in the next section. So, thank you for working through this part of the workshop. Hopefully I'll see you in the next part. See you there.